Dumelang, Sanbonani, Molweni, Eta. So good to be able to connect with you on this final segment that really addresses itself to factors that influence strategy at conception as well as implementation. What I'd love to be able to do this time around is to take you through some of the factors that I've come to appreciate in engaging with various entrepreneurs and executives of organizations when it comes to the implementation of strategy. Come along on this journey. In our first engagement during last week, we drew your attention to the fact that strategy would have at least 3 key stages that require attention. Of course, there's got to be a development of that strategy to start off, which really has a lot to do with the idea you have and what it is you need to be putting together as a game plan to execute that idea. And then the second stage is that of getting around to turn the idea into action. Because without execution, it remains just a pipe dream. It needs to degenerate to work. What we would like to cover this time around, as we're looking into the factors that influence strategy implementation, is to find ways in which you could sustain your business as you go forward. And in the process, look at ways in which you can consistently be reviewing the way you do your work with the colleagues you have or people you have employed so that the original dream can be realized. There are at least 5 things that I'd like to cover this time around. Just look into the introduction around strategy, and we will reflect on some of what we spoke about in the last module. I'd like to take us through some of the barriers to execution of strategy, then some of the challenges that are there when it comes to implementing strategy, which are really more human challenges than they are structural or systems. Then I'd like to revisit the disciplined approach to execution. You've already gone through 2 of them. I want us to be able to conclude the process with the remaining 2, and in the process get to a point where we create a rhythm of accountability. Then I would encourage you to be able to look into taking some action following a model or an approach called the OKR. And as you go through that, it will help you to be able to be objectives driven and have clear key results that you wake up in the morning and say to yourself, this is what I want to be achieving on this day. Engaging with a number of organizations, one has come to appreciate that there are good organizations and then there are great organizations. Great organizations tend to be able to fulfill just these 4 hallmarks. They follow these hallmarks. 1, they are about superior performance, but more importantly, consistent. Second, they're about ensuring that they don't just have regular customers. They've got loyal customers who are going to go all out to be able to promote whatever it is that they have purchased from them because they believe in those. And of course, you know by now that the best advertisement you could ever have is word of mouth. The third and very critical hallmark of great organizations is having employees that are fully engaged. In fact, it's about creating a winning culture. With that in place, you then get to be able to go back into the reference we had from Jeff Henderson in the first installment, which is about knowing what you are for and therefore making a very distinctive contribution in the society within which you operate, among your customers, as well as having a distinctive contribution in the manner in which you get your teams to feel and be active in their communities in ways that extend their sense of pride and ownership of the organization's brand and branding. As an entrepreneur, you are also a business leader. You may have a strategy that you've put together. Maybe you need to review the quality of that strategy. The next thing you need to be paying attention to is how you execute. The combination of the two will be how you will get to produce results. Organizations are measured on the quality of the results they produced. And of course, the consistency with which they produce means a lot more. Business leader and educator Professor Ram Charan co-authored with Larry Bossidy their book Execution, the Discipline of Getting Things Done. What they get to be able to pay most attention to is that too often leaders look at the role of execution pretty much as detail work that is beneath their dignity as leaders. Well, it turns out to be this is the primary responsibility they need to be able to fulfill. That you then, as an entrepreneur of your business and in the sector that you're in, your ability to turn the strategy into work is what will distinguish your business, your organization from anyone else that is in the sector with you. As you are reading in preparation for this particular module, you may very well recall reference being made to the 6 common errors that have to do with the inability to execute strategy very, very well. You will notice that the first thing that is highlighted is that often organizations do not execute strategies because they are not really clear about what is the objective. Sometimes they also find that even when the objectives are clear, there is a lack of buy-in from the key stakeholders on how the strategy needs to be executed. Thirdly, we find situations where the planned execution progress is not made visible, and therefore people do not know whether there is movement taking place. We also find, as a fourth factor, that there is so much misalignment between the beginning point of the strategy and the execution. So if you look at the value chain from cradle to grave, you find that there are some areas where things do not really work out well. So there are some bottlenecks that need attention. We also get to appreciate that there are instances where strategies put together, however, the key performance indicators are poorly put together. The measurement process therefore becomes very difficult and people talk their way through to non-execution. And you also find that the tracking, usually referred to as monitoring and evaluation, is not really put in place. Finally, we get to appreciate that in many instances, there is not sufficient communication about what the plan is. Think, for instance, we have as a national strategy the National Development Plan 2030. Very few people are able to articulate what that strategy is all about, and yet it is the national strategy of South Africa. Your task as an entrepreneur will be to create movement in your business. Bill Hybels has articulated that leadership is about movement, while we also hear from John C. Maxwell that leadership is about influence. So putting together your strategy has got to be as able to influence people's behaviors so that they want to execute what is written in that strategy. And then there is a sense of ownership, personalizing it, and it becomes their story. It is my firm belief that you would like to grow your enterprise. However, unless you are able to scan what's going on in the marketplace, you might find that you have developed products or services that are not relevant in the marketplace. So it becomes absolutely vital that you take time to observe what are the key trends that are taking place and follow through, because those trends may translate into opportunities that if you take them up at the right time, you may find you have a thriving business going into the future. How you are positioned in the marketplace is absolutely significant and crucial for you. When people think about a particular offering, do you become top of mind, or you get to be considered after others have declined and made themselves unavailable? It is crucial to think about the alignment between the conception of the idea, the implementation of the idea, and the results that follow from there. Usually, departments, structures have ways in which they help to execute the strategy by linking up and adding value as you go along, so that the customer in the end has something truly valuable that they can go with. I'd like for you to think the fifth and final level, that there is a need to be clear about what competencies you bring to the business that others do not have, and how you go and attract the right talent to work with you. There may also be key capabilities you need to have in place. For instance, in this data-driven era, it is important to be able to gather data and then have that analyzed, and then after you've mined and analyzed it, look at ways in which you can implement that. Do you have the capabilities to analyze the trove of data that comes your way? Do you have the capability to be able to pull out of the data that has been analyzed key comparative advantages that you can use to take your organization forward vis-a-vis your competition? You will recall from the first installment of our time together that there is a need to be able to conduct a SWOT analysis, which is backed by a thorough review of what is often referred to as a PESTEL analysis. Now, looking into the environment, the proposition that I've given through to you is one that says expand PESTEL and get to it in as Steeple HD. What does that really mean? It means you spend some time looking at social trends. What's happening in terms of lifestyles around you? What are people moving towards more often? When you look at many of the suburban areas where property used to be standalone properties, you're finding many more high-rise buildings. What's going on in there? And you're finding that you've got more of the properties wherein it's single persons, it's bachelors apartments, or it would be a single bedroom kind of setup. What's happening in there? We need to look into what's happening in terms of technology. It drives most of what we do in terms of business. We don't necessarily have to be doing things the way we've always done them pre-COVID. We need to be operating in a manner that takes into account that we are in the fifth generation 5G era, as well as the fourth industrial revolution. Economics have moved into a point where much of the work is really looking at applications of what global factors have in the local space. So there is a war in Europe, it has a bearing on what happens in Africa. It's important to look into the political aspects, primarily because of the flux in our country. You are beginning to see more and more of the coalition types of government being put in place at a municipal level, at provincial level, And indeed, it's coming through to the national level. We also need to appreciate the legal frameworks within which we are needing to be able to refer the work we do so as to ensure that the delivery translates into something that will not cause us to be litigious in our work. So we need to hire lawyers to defend our story. It's important to stay very clear in terms of what's happening with the law. An additional area that really requires attention now, and I'm bringing it on as part of Stipple HD, it's really the understanding of the environment at an ecological level. Because when we look into the effects that COVID-19 had with masks and the disposal of those masks, the plastics that we're beginning to hear more of being in the oceans and really affecting the marine life, as it were, it's crucial for us to look into how does our organization influence what's happening in the environment and the reputational impact that may have in our lives. When you look at that and you say, what is the impact on business? And then what's an implication for us in our own enterprise, so as to ensure that we do not start business with means and processes that are not going to be seen as being consistent with COP26. There's COP27 coming up. Health is a very crucial area. We're beginning to notice that mental health is something that requires attention in the world of business. And as more and more people begin to declare that they have mental health challenges, as employers, we're needing to be more accommodating, more empathic, so as to ensure that people can be more forthcoming about their conditions. The last part I want you to pay attention to is what's happening with the generations that are in the workplace. It is vital to pay attention to the fact that more and more of the Generation Z and the Alpha generation are getting into the world of business. In fact, Africa happens to be the youngest continent, while others are aging. So what does that mean in terms of your business? It means you've got to be able to structure your business around the youthful market. Pay attention to that and structure your services, your products around the people who will have the spending power and therefore will be your customers. Legendary business leader, CEO and chairman of General Electric, Jack Welch, communicated way back in 2000 that what helped him to bring the transformation necessary for GE were 4 E's and a P that his managers and his leaders needed to adopt for strategy implementation. First, their personal energy. If you then do not have any energy themselves, it becomes very difficult to drive performance. The ability to energize others so they themselves can also see it as possible to do the work that needs to be done. Then he introduced the concept of the edge, a slight edge, the ability to do the thing that others are ignoring, but when you do it, gives you that advantage in the marketplace. Then he spoke to the 4th E, which is execute. All strategies without execution boil down to zero. They are not worth the piece of paper or the file in which they've been captured electronically. The final that he said was a wraparound of the 4 E's was passion. When you're passionate about what you do, which means you love what you do, it exudes out of you and touches others as well. When you can show that you're passionate about your product, you're passionate about your services, you will be contagious and others will want to be able to buy what you are selling, because we are all in the sales business. Heike Bruch and Sumantra Ghoshal took note of what is going on in 3 continents, in Africa, in Europe, and in Asia, in Japan. They identified over a longitudinal study of 10 years with renowned international brands that there are 90% of managers in those organizations who were found to be typically either distracted or disengaged from key organizational objectives. Now, that's a very crucial thing for us to pay attention to. When you've got 9 out of 10 people distracted or disengaged, the load resides on the 1 out of those 10. These 9 out of 10 confuse frenetic motion with constructive action, and they are noted for their unproductive busyness. As you look into your business, I would like to believe you will not be caught in the trap of being super busy but unproductive. Bruce and Ghoshal got to be able to present this in a matrix that I believe is going to be very helpful for you. You will notice as it appears in the student roadmap that I'm asking you to be able to spend some time reflecting on where you are most of the time, and if you have assembled a team, where the team is at. There's an interplay of 2 things: energy, which is something that people bring into the organization, and focus, that which you bring as the entrepreneur, you bring as the leader. Now, in that interplay, where energy and focus are low, you tend to find that the people who are in there are asking themselves often, why should I bother engaging myself seriously? And they are noted for procrastination. They keep on delaying things and do not really get anything done until they've gotten a reminder. You will notice at the bottom right-hand corner, people who are highly energized but not focused. They are busybodies. They're pretty much hamsters. They're turning the wheel, but they're not really making any forward movement. Then there's an interesting crowd of people who are focused on what needs to be done, but are not energized to go the extra mile. Now, those are people who may very well have gotten the vision when you presented it, but they will do just enough to stay out of trouble. I want to believe that you are going to be the one who is going to be on the top right-hand corner, and you will pull with you the same number of people so that they too can become purposeful. You will notice, as we indicated in your previous week's work, how being purposeful gives meaning to everything that we do. Now, in the study, what transpired was 3 out of 10 people procrastinate. 4 out of 10 people are distracted. Now, that immediately gives you 70% of the people in a working environment who have all kinds of energy, varying levels of energy, but are low in terms of focus. Now, that in a bell curve suggests that a majority of people could be doing more, but they are not. And then you find 2 out of 10 people who are in the organization, but their heart is somewhere else. It leaves you with just 1 out of 10. Now, the challenge that you may have is one of saying, how do you get a critical mass of people focused on the things that need to be focused on? The proposition is one that says, start with the people who are distracted. They already have the energy. All they need is focus. When you do that, half the battle is won. And then follow that with the people who are disengaged, because the disengagement already indicates that there is an excitement about what the organization is about, but it's not being carried through because the energy leaks somewhat. When you do that, you've got a different kind of 70% of people who are going to be purposeful. What do you do with the 3 out of 10 people? Well, the proposition is one that says what you have done in paying attention to the distracted, the disengaged, forces the procrastinators to want to do something themselves. What this does is that with the introduction of the terminology of FOMO, the fear of missing out, procrastinators are driven by peer pressure. Therefore, my recommendation to you is think about how you can switch the procrastinators on by your attention to the distracted and the disengaged so that the 70% pull the 30%. What we've been able to establish over years of being involved in strategy execution is that there are basically 7 key areas that would ease your strategy execution when you really pay attention to it. First and foremost, you always have to be clear about what you're about, what your strategy, what your organization is about, because you're putting a game plan that should guide other people to come along. The second thing is to ensure that you, as the entrepreneur and the leader, are committed to providing the necessary resources, the time to get the job done, and you do it consistently. Commitment is different from involvement. What it does mean is that you will go that extra mile and others will see that and join in with you. The translation becomes absolutely vital when you think about the fact that people's performance contracting is a personal thing. Therefore, they need to be able to translate your vision, your dream, into what it means for them on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Fourthly, it becomes important to provide the necessary resources to get the work done, but also to have structures and systems that enable delivery on the work that needs to be done. When you enable people and take away obstacles, the work gets to be delivered with optimal utilization of self and the resources available to them. A fifth and very important area is to be able to cut out the silos and the fiefdoms that people get to be able to put. In a number of organizations, especially when they get bigger, you find that there are some silos and there are people who are in there in cliques and they do things in ways that are not really collaborative. What we propose is that to get the most, 1 + 1 should give you 3 or more. Therefore, pursue synergy. The sixth and most important thing in the space of execution is that somebody needs to be holding themselves accountable for the delivery. It is noted that Albert Einstein said, all of the things that are counted do not necessarily count, and the things that are not counted turn out to be the things that should be counted. When you think about accountability, it is really about you ensuring that you can be counted upon for the delivery, which means it's about dependability, it's about reliability. Make that happen. It takes the organization forward, and more people look into life and say they want to follow you. The seventh and final area is to be able to consider consequences. Now, you've got 2 kinds of consequences: good consequences and bad consequences. When the work is done well, people know that there will be a bonus. People know there will be a promotion. People know, so there are extrinsic motivators that people can work with. But also, when there are negative consequences, they know what to avoid. And those are the things that form the culture of your organization. Articulating upfront what the consequences are of doing the job well and not doing it well help the performers to do the things and be consistent and know that they have a role they can play in ensuring that the outcomes are favorable to themselves. You will recall from our previous installment around the 4 disciplines of execution. There are 4 key breakdowns in execution. The first is that people are not clear as to what the goal is, and therefore they don't know what to shoot for. The second is that they don't know what they are required to do in order to achieve the goal. And when people are coasting along without allocated responsibilities for them to be able to do even self-defined responsibilities, work doesn't get to be done. Thirdly, when people do not have a scoreboard that they're looking at that tells them how they're progressing, you will find that an organization is unable to make the progress it's meant to have. Fourth and final, and this is something that you would want to pay attention to as the business owner, as an entrepreneur, is that you hold yourself accountable and you hold others in your team accountable for delivery. And this is a process you will be guarding jealously, because if you're not, you will find excuses, cites, rules, instead of people doing what they are hired to do. So a key factor influencing strategy implementation is the ability to let discipline guide you. That's a very important factor. Discipline is a regimen, it's a consistent regimen that leads you to the freedom to act when you need to and as you need to, without anybody prodding you behind. Taking a cue from business philosopher Jim Rohn, who is a legend in network marketing, that we all must suffer one of two pains: a pain of discipline or a pain of regret. When we discipline ourselves to do the things that need to be done, we're going to be able to have a life that others are wishing they could have, but never can because they're not committed to do the unpopular and sometimes crummy and unexciting bits of work, which when added together turn out into something golden. So let's get back to the work of Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and Jim Helling on the 4 disciplines of execution. And let's take it that we need to be able to discipline ourselves and follow the steps one after the other. First and foremost, looking into what is wildly important, which is a distinction from the pretty important things that we may want to be doing. So have a clear focus on that. Second, we need to be acting on the lead measures. These are crucial because they define the behavior necessary to deliver on the goals. These two are backed up by what we're going to do this time around, which is having the third discipline of keeping a compelling scoreboard. The scoreboard helps to create a different and matching culture that has to do with people pulling themselves together to play as winners. The fourth and final discipline is that of creating a rhythm of accountability, where on a weekly basis we get together, we review what we promised we're going to do and look at the scoreboard and then say, let's plan the future together. So let's visit the first discipline of execution. And it is about focusing on the wildly important. Jim Collins has cautioned us, in fact, and has coined the term that good is the enemy of great. Now think about Muhammad Ali. He chose that he would be the greatest. There were many good boxers in his era, but he chose to be the greatest. And that propelled him to do the things that other boxers were not doing. And of course, he had the gift of the gab, and he could tell the story behind his successes. Take yourself back to the initial conversation around the wildly important goals. There is a thinking that is pervasive in the world of business, where managers would say we can effectively accomplish 6, 8, or even 10 important goals all at once. But when you stretch that thinly, it's highly unlikely that the goals are going to be accomplished with excellence. The thinking we want to bring across here with focusing on the wildly important is that you will accomplish greatness and excellence when you pay attention to 1, 2, maximum 3 goals. That will take you forward. So if you can see yourself in that light, what you will then do is to be crystal clear on the wildly important goals. You will then define what are the leg measures to each of the goals. What you get is laser focus on your top priorities. Jim Stewart said something fundamental in relation to the power of focus. He said, when you've got 1 to 3 goals, you're most likely to achieve all 3 with excellence. Between 4 and 10 goals, you will be lucky to be able to achieve between 1 and 2 goals with excellence. Beyond 10, none will be achieved with excellence. Therefore, there is a need to be laser sharp in pointing yourself to 1, 2, maximum 3 goals as you are steering your organization into the future. Just that mindset will shift and bring to you the success in implementing your strategy. As a deliverable of the first discipline, we can bring it through to the world of football. And if you were in the leadership of Sundowns, you could easily be able to tell everybody, our goal this year is to win the 2022 MTN 8, which show us as back-to-back winners and conquerors, as it were. Obviously, all the other teams that have participated in the 2021 championship or premiership would have wanted to have set for themselves winning the MTN 8 of 2022. Right now, only 4 are left, and we will get to know who will be the champions before the end of November. The second discipline is one of acting on lead measures. We made reference to this previously, that Pareto has helped us to think and appreciate that 80% of the results come from 20% of the activities. Therefore, we need to be very clear about what activities we engage in that have the greatest potential of yielding maximum results for us. It all starts with our mindset. If we've got the mindset where we are watching the leg measures and work hard to achieve the wildly important goals, we might find we are unable to realize the goals we've set for ourselves. However, when we decide to act on lead measures as the best predictors of the achievement of the wildly important goals, we will find that the behavior will be one where we're going to analyze and identify the 80-20 activities, and we'll build the lead measures that will be predictive as well as influenceable, so as to ensure that on a weekly, fortnightly, and monthly basis, we are doing the things that will translate into the goal realization. So what do we get from that? A clear understanding of what personally and individually we need to do to achieve the wildly important goal. A key example of this comes through from Fly South Air. They have made it very clear that they want to be the best on-time airline in the country. And therefore, in order to be able to achieve that, they need to adhere to safety standards. They've said for themselves that they will ensure a 100% safe arrival wherever they go. So they check with airports company. They are checked all the time in terms of their safety. The lead measure that they work on is ensuring that they comply with pre-flight checklists before takeoff. So they're not going to be changing midstream on their flight to the various destinations they go to. So when they've got the checklist sorted out, they've got the necessary meals which they bring on board, they've got the right customers in the plane, they've got their luggage in the plane, and they've got the correct papers for the destination they need to be able to get to, they can assure all their customers will arrive on time. We now enter the third discipline. The third discipline of execution says we need to keep a compelling scoreboard. And this is slightly different to the balanced scorecard, which managers keep but not necessarily share on a regular basis. A compelling scoreboard has a way of ensuring that people will play differently and more purposefully when they are keeping score. You will have taken note every now and again when you come through to watch a televised match, and you coming in when the match has already been playing. The first thing you're most likely to be looking at on your TV screen is what is the score. We know people will play differently, more purposefully when they are keeping score. If they're not, they will be surprised at the end of the game. The thinking around keeping score is a very crucial one, because when you tell yourself that everybody knows how we're doing, but without giving them an update on how they're performing, you could easily find that 10 months go by, people think that they're on track when in fact they are off track. The thinking is one that says on a regular basis, we get serious about our goals by keeping score and communicating what's on the scoreboard in a transparent manner. What do we do then? We build a compelling team scoreboard so that team members know what it is they need to do to get the organization to go forward. And if we can institute a tool through which we can regularly update the scoreboard, we then are empowering the participants to feel they can do something about creating the shift. So what do we get from that? We have a highly motivated team, we have fully engaged team, and therefore they can do course correction as they go along. Now that is something you would want to do and maintain inside your organization. If you've visited any of the hotel chains, particularly the Marriott chain, you will have noticed that they keep track of what's going on in terms of customer satisfaction. And amongst the things that they do pay attention to is the courtesy and helpfulness of the front desk, the courtesy and helpfulness of the bag handlers, and people who are inside the room that you're going to be staying in. They also monitor very closely the ease of checking in and checking out. Of course, sometimes you're able to check in before you arrive at the establishment itself, but you still have an interaction with the front desk. How that check-in has been taken care of and how the checkout has been taken care of is a measure of how well you're likely to recommend the establishment to others. So on a scale of 1 to 10, they always are asking, how do we feature? This is one way in which the Marriott Group keeps their staff focused on the things that matter to their customers. The fourth and final discipline is that of creating a cadence or a rhythm of accountability. Now, this is absolutely vital for us to pay attention to, because often that which counts is not counted, and the things that are counted do not really count, do not really matter. So we want to be able to bring in a discipline wherein accountability translates into fuller commitment. No accountability, no commitment. The mindset then is one that is not just about shouting and announcing that we will execute. It is about taking into account that as a manager and as a leader and as an entrepreneur, execution will fall apart if there is no personal planning and team accountability. If you leave it out to the people to be able to sort themselves out, that may very well be abdication of responsibility. So what do? You maximize the time you spend on what is wildly important, clarifying the wildly important goals, and then ensuring that people do the things they need to do. Hold them and hold yourself accountable on a weekly basis with an accountability session that is scheduled on a regular rhythm. You will find that there will be a very high performance, highly accountable work team that will be executing the strategy you've set in place. A key deliverable of creating the cadence of accountability is to ensure that we have a weekly campus in which everybody is asked on a weekly basis, what's the one thing you can do this week that will move the needle so that we can achieve the goal that we've set for ourselves? And then being deliberate about having the wildly important goal accountability session. And the process thereof is going to be one that will help the organization to stay on track as much as possible. We believe that it is important for you to be working on ensuring that you are in the Kaizen mode. You are making things better all the time. So what are some of the things you could be doing in order to ensure that you get better? 2, clarify what needs to be done and evaluate what is being done. Now, what you have on your screen indicates through to you. We've got to be able to define our win. Why do we do that? So that people know exactly what is going to be evaluated and what they are going to be evaluated on. How do you go about doing that? You determine the critical events that will make you a better enterprise. You also need to be creating the terminology that everyone is able to embrace. Why do you do so? Because a lot will hang on the statements that are made, especially when you've made a decision of the direction that needs to be taken. How do you go about doing that? You embrace the process. You have multiple wildly important meetings, briefing meetings. You take time to determine the right language that will help the people to internalize what it is that needs to be done. You take time to clarify the win down to the roles within the organization. Why do you do that? Because everyone then will get to know the lens through which their success and the value they add is going to be evaluated. How do you go about it? Well, you create a one-sentence job description instead of multiple paragraphs of job descriptions. If you don't get anything else done right, what is the one thing that matters most? Just that will help people to be laser focused on what they need to do. Evaluation will define the standard. Why? Because evaluation is no better than the standard against which everything gets to be evaluated. In fact, we say there is a gold standard for all the work that gets to be done. Winners get a gold medal. How do you go about that? You create a process that takes both the numbers and the experiential value that people go through into consideration. Because some is going to be qualitative while other bits are going to be quantitative. You want to make it your goal to learn from all experiences. Why? Because right isn't the goal. Better is the goal. You can't make something better if all you do is fix what is broken. You need to be working on making things better all the time. How do you go about this? You evaluate both your successes and your shortcomings. Finally, you create an environment where everything is on the table. Nothing is shoved under the table, so there is a transparency throughout the work that's being done. Why? Evaluation must be unfiltered. If you cannot criticize something, well, you can't make it any better. So you want to be deliberate about this aspect. Finally, how do you go about doing this? Well, regularly bring in fresh eyes, and make sure nothing is off limits. Andy Stanley introduced this into his enterprise, North Point Community Church. And amazingly, because of its excellent application in that voluntary environment, it has been taken through to businesses all around the United States of America and all around the world. Australia, South Africa in particular, have been implementing this process. So then, how do we hold ourselves accountable? Well, the approach is 3 steps. We report on the commitments. On Friday, we get together. We say, these are the things I had committed to be able to do at the start of the week. Let's go to the scoreboard. What does it look like? Well, here are my successes. Here are the shortcomings. Let's review what is in there. What are the lessons from the shortcomings? And also, what are the lessons from the successes? The third step is to be able to plan for the future. And as an entrepreneur, you will have people that are looking up to you to clear the path for them, take away the bottlenecks. And when you do so, it makes it easier for them to make new commitments for the week ahead. Let's now introduce a very key activity that I believe you will find significant value in. If you're thinking about growing your business, 10 times growth, John Doerr has introduced a concept called OKR, which in fact was introduced by Andy Grove in the leadership of the Intel company. OKR stands for objectives and key results. So what I will do now is to be able to share with you examples of OKRs in companies that you're familiar with. And then you will appreciate the value of applying this for yourself. And the proposition is that you really take time to clear for yourself your outcomes and your objectives as well as the key results. Legendary founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, said this: if we get better, our customers will demand that we get bigger. Look at your enterprise and consider what you can do to become a better player in your sector. And as you do so, your customers will be looking to see you grow and get bigger. You'll be familiar with YouTube. You have seen content that has been placed on YouTube. But it's interesting to be able to note that when the company was bought over by Google, it had been a competition to Google's video business. The merger of the two organizations, or the acquisition of YouTube, gave a new objective for the people at Google. They set for themselves an objective of reaching 1 billion hours of watch time per day. And this was way back in 2017. Now you can do the same thing for yourself. Now what was very important about this was that they wanted to monitor specific results which would show that the objective is being met. They would look at what is it that the search team and the main applications team is going to do to increase that watch time. What would be done by the team that's working in the living room? They gave a percentage. They set for themselves a goal to grow engagement and gaming watch time. I happen to have a son who loves gaming, and the amount of time that he spends in the gaming space is something that is monitored quite closely by YouTube. Finally, they looked into launching the YouTube virtual reality experience and the virtual reality catalog, and they would be looking into that and say, we want to grow the videos from X to Y. Setting those key results position them to a point where for a good 4 years they were monitoring what was happening with watch time. for 4 consecutive years. In one weekend, they breached the number. And that set a emotion, an accountability process throughout the Google enterprise. Cascading strategy to a point where it is delivered at a departmental level is a great example of simplifying and staying purpose-driven. The OKR of a finance department, as an example, could be one that says what we're about is to increase financial security. What becomes our key results then? It is eliminating all high interest debt. Second key result is to ensure that in the next 6 months, we have in our savings account enough money to cover us until the end of the year. And then to be able to look into ensuring that we've got a credit score that increases at least 10 points every update until we reach the number of 800. Now that's a good and easy way to track the performance of a department. An area that has become extremely important in reporting inside organizations is around ESG, environment, sustainability, and governance. Most organizations since COP26 have been looking into ways of ensuring, here is the objective, creating the lowest carbon footprint in their respective industries. Now, a key example that is coming through here is, well, so what will be the results? 100% zero waste by our supply chain and shipping infrastructure units. Second, ensuring that we pay 100% carbon offset for the calculated carbon dioxide emissions. Something that we could practically do is to ensure that 25% of the material that we use in our packaging is compostable, and 75% of the material we use in our packaging is biodegradable. Look at that. That simplifies ESG, and people can see themselves and say, I can do something about this. Well, let's see how you can do it yourself. So your activity is to identify a key objective you would want to have fulfilled, aligning your business accordingly, and then identify key results that will take you to where you want to get to. Try this, and it will clear things to a point where purpose drives all the work you do. As we draw to a close, I want to borrow words that come through from Nelson Mandela, our democracy's founding president. Borrowing from Marianne Williamson, says, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. And as an entrepreneur, you might be seeing yourself saying the same. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. In our smallness, we have the ability to be more nimble and creative. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? As you take yourself to growing your business, I'd like to believe that what we've covered has helped you to appreciate the various factors that influence strategy. Some may be structural. Others have to do with the inability to clarify the core objective of your business, lack of commitment to that, an inability for people to translate the strategy for themselves. Sometimes we hold back in providing people the resources they need to get the job done. And we may even keep silos when there should not be any. what becomes absolutely vital is to create an environment where collaboration is a way of life. Finally, it is necessary to hold ourselves, our colleagues, and everybody else who is connected to our business accountable for the results. When we do so, the consequences are going to be ones we can easily predict. Every choice we make has a twin called consequence. Strategy is about defining our next. And I want to believe that your next is about greatness, not just about being good, but being great in your sector, being great in your industry. Be a new benchmark so others will follow your footsteps. Leave indelible marks in people's hearts, in people's minds, so the future is defined by what you do today. Have a great time. I wish you great success and look forward to engaging with you in the future. Blessings to you.